So this is going to be an open discussion about open standards and how they provide a competitive advantage for the future of financial services. This session is going to be moderated by Laura, so I'm going to hand it over to her for introductions and kicking off the grand finale of LEAP 2026. Over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Buddha. And, I kind of wanted to run that poll back when Mark Boyd was giving his presentation, because he had an awesome slide which showed the standards that were most adopted worldwide, that had the heavy adoption. Berlin Group is taking, over in Europe, is taking things by storm as far as company adoption. And then FDX actually was very high up on there for North America for the number of companies that have adopted. And so that was really exciting to see. And of course, then we had Berlin Group and Stettin. I know a lot of our international folks are probably off, but they'll be watching this talk later on a recorded phase. But so it was very interesting. If you missed Mark's session, I'd highly suggest going back to it and watching the replay. But to kick this off, as I was talking about, all these standards, most of them were mandated on a regulation base. So a lot of people originally adopted them as a compliance checkbox. But as if you were with us all day today, you'll notice that no one really says, we're doing this because it's a compliance checkbox. No. Everybody is implementing the APIs and standardized APIs for something broader, something better, around better customer experiences, better. You heard Ross saying they implemented it for better member experiences, to allow them to do interoperability, get better trust with their customers, and better have innovation happening. And so we're really here to help answer, how do open standards really help you out in competing. So to begin with, I'm going to thank all of our members for joining here. But for a quick, we want to do a quick orientation around the room, if you wouldn't mind telling everybody who you are, which standards you live in or have lived in and played in, and the one thing you wish more practitioners understood about the standard before they started on the journey. So I am going to start with Laurent.
With me?
Yeah, with you.
Okay.
I'll start with you.
So Laurent Van Haffels, first of all, thank you for having us. Great discussion so far. I work for FDX, lead the member success and industry engagement. So in which standard do I live? Well, I work for FDX, so and this is pretty much the only one in the US and Canada where the de facto standard. And then on your last questions about, what do I wish? What FDX essentially does is produce specifications, and there are some nuances of interpretation. And so my wish would be that everyone who wants to implement this technical standard participate to our work group and task force so that they can understand what are the right answers for them when it comes to these nuances.
Operations director in OBIE, so I've been using OBIE standards. But I have also been working with other standards as well, like Berlin Group. Before my time at OBIE, I was working at Standard Chartered as their European open banking lead. So we also use in addition to OBIE standard and also Berlin Group standard and in the rest of the European region. And right now I'm working in a UK term called smart data. So basically on top of open banking, we are implementing open finance, and smart data is about broaden the data sharing across different sectors in energy and medical services, etc. So that's what we are doing right now. And the one word I think I would like to say customer outcome focus before we do. I recommend before we implement any or work on any standards.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And Clyde.
Hi, I'm Clyde Cutting. I am a open banking solutions architect for Truist Bank. I played a similar role at Wells Fargo in the past. One of the things that I think is most critical, especially at the bigger institutions, is sort of enterprise-wide buy-in or collaboration, because a lot of the history of large banking institutions is siloed lines of business, and with any of the API schemas definitions, we're really looking to provide a customer 360-degree view, and many institutions have not had that. Right? Online banking and mobile banking are starting to deliver those things, or have been delivering those for a while, but internally, there's still a lot of work to engage with all the different account systems of record.
Yeah, very good. Well, I'm going to start with you then, Clyde, for asking a question. You've done something very rare. For all of you that know or have looked at FDX, if you open the documentation, it's got Clyde's fingerprints all over it. He does a great job of making sure everything looks perfect and works. But he also, what he's done rare is he's actually implemented FDX at 2 large organizations. And so one of the things I'd like to ask, well, most people only see one side of it. They see when the implementation of the specification is done. But when you're sitting inside Truist building this out, or Wells Fargo, or where you live building this out, what are the hidden requirements that nobody talks about in standards? Documentation and versioning and semantics and things like that. What when you're doing the implementation, what are the hidden things that you have to worry about?
Sure. Well, the unhidden things, right, are the security profiles and the API definitions, right? So those are sort of the starting point. Then as you start building those out, you start asking, one of the main things is the semantic understanding of what those definitions mean, right? So I have to understand what FDX is expecting that field to mean, and then be able to understand what my backend systems of record, if they have that data, what they call that data, is that semantically the same data, and that API, integration is part of what I talked about earlier. Additionally, versioning and the ongoing effort of keeping up to date, both with external partner requirements as they change, as well as the standard changes. You have to expect that every API will evolve over time and need to be supported over time. Those are some of the critical things that you don't necessarily see up front.
And does that really affect interoperability? Everybody being at the right, is that hard to keep it interoperable if everybody's not at the right level?
I don't think we can expect everybody to be at a similar level ever, right? So interoperability extends to multiple versions, right? So in order to be interoperable, I have to support the past version for my past customers and the current version for people that I'm onboarding now.
Very good. Heather, you've watched this implementation journey play out across like the UK, Europe, APAC, and other markets. What recent developments do you think have helped accelerate implementation and encourage adoption? Do you think, what do you think was done differently in each one of those use cases?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. And yeah, exactly. I think the open standard has really, the standard has already really expanded. So in UK, there's OBIE standards and Berlin Group standards, and FDX has been a very interesting standard. Actually, we have been learning a lot as well. I have seen myself a lot of discussions and user groups across the two standards, because it's very interestingly two standards across regulation-driven and market-driven approaches. And also in the APAC and HAMA and in Hong Kong, Japan, and also Singapore, there are a lot of really good development in standards. What I find actually, there are two things I particularly feel has been accelerating the development standards. One is what I was talking about custom outcome driven approach. And the other one is about how do we treat regulation as a drive for innovation. So on the customer outcome driven approach, I would like to refer to, for example, in the UK, when we implement the smart data, we have to expand from the open banking standard into further sectors, so further financial services sector as well as other sectors. So that means the complexity suddenly has become more than tenfold because the scope has become so big. And to be able to do that, I found that we gradually learn more about using a principle-based customer outcome approach to drive this innovation so that our effort can be aligned. Otherwise, the complexity will really prolong the progress. And so, this is actually quite different from our previous effort in many ways. So previously, we have been developing standards on APIs, on trust services, consent framework, etc. They are all very good because they are implementing the infrastructure. But to be able to galvanize our effort across different sectors, we are looking at from top-down approach as well. So looking at what the customer needs, what are the problems that we need to solve. From there, we can drive into the specific standards to be able to address different customer issues. So that's
yeah, very good. So kind of like what Ross was saying on our previous call with RBFCU, where they took a member approach. It was not driven by regulation. It was like, what was the use cases? What helps our members the most? And we implement the standards for that. And you're saying the smart data is taking that approach, saying what will help the community at large and focusing on those use cases. Very good. So Laurent, that brings me to you. And kind of going on along the lines of the innovation and the topic of the day, AI. But before we get to the AI layer, let's lay the ground for the ground in the room for what FDX actually stands for. Like, give me an example of how many consumers and institutions that are now connected through FDX across the US and Canada. Mark gave like an amazing number, competing with the likes of Berlin Group. So let's hear it from the source.
So there are over 1,000 organizations that use the FDX standard in the US and Canada. There's no real other standard, and Berlin is we don't compete with the Berlin Group that is in Europe. They're more like for taxonomy. So actually, they both actually works together. I think we used to measure in terms of API connected account, like we had over 115 million of this account, but it's actually a lot more than this, and we're not sure that the measurement is really accurate anymore. So really, we're really the official and de facto standard today across the board in the US and Canada.
Yeah, wow, very good. So FDX was founded by a group coming together that's saying this was a market-driven approach instead of a regulated-driven approach to building an open standard. And recently, you guys made as a group made an agreement. Let's establish an AI task force. Can you explain a little bit what was the moment in the industry that made everybody decide, hey, we need this task force at FDX, and what are the use cases that you're tackling?
Sure. Just before answering your questions, back to your point earlier, I think it's important to mention that FDX is member-led. It's an industry effort. Our members are banks like Truist, where Clyde is, credit union, fintech, data aggregators, also consulting organizations, and even privacy advocates. So it's really built by our members, by the industry, for the industry. Now, back to your question on AI. Well, you can do open finance without AI, and you can do AI without open finance. However, those two worlds are going to intersect sooner or later. So we couldn't ignore, the elephant in the room, and we decided to start some explorations with our members around AI, and specifically, everything we do is at the intersections of open finance. So, for instance, when you look at an agent as an OAuth API client, right, or an agent as a consent manager, basically you're not using any more hard-coded, or script, but you are actually letting the agent to decide, make some dynamic, decision in terms of what to collect, from the with still the consent. But if you give the consent, your consent as a consumer, back to an agent, then the agents could decide, what to collect, when to collect informations, what to access. So there are some challenges that we're trying to solve, and defining what are the real challenges, what do we do about it. So it's really the beginning of this task force that we just launched.
Yeah, it's very exciting task force. And like Laurent said when he started the call, how do how can we move it forward? We need participation. So, join FDX
Right.
and participate and help us define this, because I think it's very important for interoperability. And in fact, I'm going to go back to Clyde about that. When we spoke the other day, you made an observation that reframes kind of the standards entirely. Standards, you were saying that standards compliance forces large banks to finally break down internal data silos that have been sitting there for decades, and that it could actually the interoperability of standards could actually put smaller institutions with good vendor partners ahead of one tier banks in some ways, because it will help them accelerate. Obviously, the ultimate goal of all of this is being interoperability and the ability to move faster and provide better new services. So, Clyde, does implementing FDX make you more interoperable, or is there still some gaps? What are the challenges you face when you're trying to get to this interoperability goal?
Well, I think Truist is in the middle of doing major onboarding as we are still launching our open banking platform. And so we're really discovering the need for, in addition to the semantic understanding of individual elements and the upcoming burden of maintaining versions on an ongoing basis, that we need to have good testing, right? We want our external partners to test and discover whether they can use our APIs before they get to production and start reporting production problems. We also need to have good monitoring, right? So when they are calling in production, how often are they calling? Are they successful or not? Is there anything we need to do to triage? But I think in addition to those, one of the constraints of building yourself rather than using a vendor solution is that there are different individual constraints specific to our environment that we have to communicate to our external partners and get them to understand how to interact or work around that constraint until we can potentially deal with it in the future, or maybe it'll be a long-lived difference from the standard just because of whatever it is we're dealing with internally.
Yeah. And then, you mentioned that interoperability challenge is there, but do you believe I'm going to set you up, but do you believe AI will have the same challenges? And before you also mentioned the semantic understanding of the standards. A lot of people kind of think, oh, AI will just figure it out.
So, there are a lot of data elements that are sort of understood, right? An account ID is an ID for the account, not a problem. But AI has, no semantic understanding at all, right? It's not using semantics or understanding. So anything that is not well understood in the industry and you can't define it for an AI agent, if you're already struggling to define it between the partner and the data provider or internally at the data provider, you're going to have problems. One example in FDX right now on transactions, there's a category and a category, or a subcategory and a category field on the transaction. Well, that sounds like, it's defined as a string. So does that mean, shopping and electronics are my category and subcategory? The FDX definition is that it should be a merchant category code and the type of code set it comes from, which it doesn't sound like that's what category and subcategory means.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. All right. Now, thinking about that and thinking about actually using the FDX APIs with the security and the consent and the trust, and thinking about agentic finance, Heather, AI agents, are going to be making payments, accessing account data, managing portfolios on behalf of consumers. The other day when we spoke, you drew a direct line between the consent and privacy challenges that we've already solved in open banking and what is coming here. What did open banking get right with that the AI world should steal immediately? So can the AI world learn from what we did in the open finance world?
Yeah. Great question, Laura. AI and open banking really, they all share data. So they all go hand in hand with data sharing. So in that sense, there are a lot of things I believe can be learned from open banking. For example, the customer privacy you were talking about. So using open banking, we have created a mechanism to provide the customer privacy with consent. And in AI, it's the same. Like, for example, right now we have, to do the business, we have KIB, KYC. Now we have KYA as well, know your agent. So the agent coming, yeah. So from AI, now we need to know them. And to be able to know them, then we need to know whether they are the right agent in the ecosystem, or are they, fraud or coming from the party that we don't want to be part of. And also, we like to have the consent from the customer to see whether they agree for that agent to serve the customer during payment, which is a very critical function in our daily lives. So that's two very special assets, I would say, coming from open banking we can use. And the other one, I would go back to your interoperability discussions we have been talking about, because interoperability, in my view, not only it would involve technology interoperability, but also business model interoperability, regulation interoperability, and especially when we are expanding the customer service sharing from payment into wider financial services. Then if AI is going to serve so much functions in our AI lives, why can't we, think trust is so important? So we can use the trust framework, for example, in Europe we have created to help with this need. So yeah, I do believe there are a lot of things we could borrow and learn from each other between AI and open banking.
For our North America friends here that are unfamiliar with open banking regulation worldwide, and in other regulated industries like in Europe, like UK and the European Union and Brazil and other regions, they have what's called a trust network. And this is where providers, the banks, the API providers, and the consumers register, and so their trust, and there's a set of rules that are set by the regulators for how liability flows in that trust framework. In the US, we do not have that trust framework, just because of the dynamics, where the US is also very different in our dynamics, and the the vast amount of banks and credit unions and fintechs that we have to offer. So I know a lot of you are probably wondering what the trust framework was. So Laurent, I know we're getting close on time here, and please, if you have a question, you better enter it in the chat now because we only have a couple minutes. One of the things I wanted to ask, kind of going back to your AI task force is, if you had to give a call to action for the institutions in the room who want to get ahead on AI and help with the standards, what would your call to action be?
Well, that's pretty simple. Participate. You don't want to be left out. You wanna share. Have your voice heard and influence the standard and help us to shape it. Join FDX and participate to this task force. They are open to anyone, but that's the best way to learn and to influence the standard.
Okay. All right. We have a couple minutes, so we have one more question for everybody. Okay, it's going to be a quick round table. So, what is the one thing you would change about how this industry talks about open standards? Like one phrase, one habit, one framing. Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Go for it.
So in the absence of the CFPB regulations, I think the phrase I would use is, table stakes as regulation, right? If banks are going to be impacted if they don't develop open banking APIs. So let's not worry about regulation so much as serving our customers by delivering.
Yeah, very good. I agree. Heather.
I can go next. Yeah, I would think partnership and ecosystem collaboration. We have already been doing a lot, but we need to do more.
Very good. And Laurent.
So don't talk about open finance. Talk about the business case. This is not a compliance exercise. This is a business exercise. To the point that Clyde just made. Nobody cares about the definitions of open finance. So focus on the business case and the value for your customers and your organization.
I think I think that's an excellent way to end because it's kind of the theme that we heard going from the first session with Gen Z and Ruben saying nobody comes and says, no Gen Z,
Exactly.
No person comes and says, I want open finance. They say, I want to be able to do this. We have heard Ross say, you know what, we did this because it was for our members, to give our members control, to give our members that interoperability, to use those services they want to use. And really about, and going with Nicholas and moving to the next generation. So it really is about what are your business cases, and open finance technology is how you enable those business cases.
Exactly.
And Buddha's here to take us off stage.
No, I'm here more to appreciate what's been going on the stage. So really, really well done here. This has been a great conversation. I think the perfect note to end it on was what you just said. It doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter what the open standards or where they live and how they are created. Ultimately, it's about the business case. It's a means to an end to achieve an outcome. And I think that's the gap. That's the bridge that we want to help create together. So appreciate all the fantastic conversations. It's been great having you and listening from backstage. So thank you, everyone. Thanks to all the speakers here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.